Platting Board will come to order. It is 6:30 on the 6th of November, 2013. May I have the roll call, please?
Mr. Story?
Here.
Mr. Abel? Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Present.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Kange?
Here.
Mr. Edmondson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Ms. Enix? Here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one member missing, and we have more than a quorum. And the first item on the agenda is approvals, and the approvals are summary of action for October 2nd, 2013, and I'd like to pause for a second and just ask one question. May I have a positive motion to accept the summary of action for October 2nd, 2013? Mr. Walker and Mr. Fuller seconds. Is there any opposition or discussion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. The next approvals are the roll call, or excuse me, the draft minutes of September 4th, 2013. May I have a positive motion to accept these, please? Mr. Walker and Mr. Fuller's second. Is there any corrections or any discussion, opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the short plats, and these are just informational. Is there any discussion on the short plats of September 30th and October 14th? Hearing and thank you, October 7th. Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Kange, Mr. Walker, you're moving to accept these? Mr. Kange? These are just informational, but thank you. Next item on the agenda is special orders of business disclosures. Are there any disclosures this evening? Mr. Kange, whoops. Mr. Edmondson.
In case S11496-8 Eagle Crossing subdivision, Bob Peterson, the owner of the company that I work for, is partners with Connie Ushimura of Driftwood Bay LLC, who's the petitioner in this case, on another project. They are not partners on this project.
Thank you.
I just feel like I need to disclose that. Our company, nor do I, nor does Bob Peterson have a personal interest or a financial interest in this case, and I feel like I can act impartially in it.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Board Member Edmondson to participate? Mr. Kange, and seconded by Mr. Walker. Mr. Kange, would you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In case S11496-8, I move to direct Mr. Edmondson to participate in the case.
Thank you. Is there any? Would you speak to your motion, please?
Thank you. Based on Mr. Edmondson's statement, I believe he can act fair and participate in the case. I tend to vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this motion? Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. Mr. Edmondson, you're directed to participate in case S11496-8 Eagle Crossing subdivision. Mr. Edmondson, do you have another disclosure? Or,
No, I don't.
thank you. Are there any other disclosures?
Yes.
Ms. Enix?
In case number S11496, Eagle Crossing, I'd like to disclose that Jim Sawhill is a known person to me, and I've done work before for Connie Yoshimura. I don't have any financial or otherwise interest in this case, and I feel like I can be a fair and impartial judgment on this case, so I would like to participate.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Board Member Enix to participate, please? Mr. Walker and Mr. Edmondson. Mr. Walker, will you state your motion and speak to your motion, please?
I would move that Ms. Enix be directed to participate. She doesn't have any significant monetary interest in the case before us. There is no interest in the outcome of the case, and I think that she can rule fairly in the matter.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. Ms. Enix, you're directed to participate in case S11496-8. Are there any additional disclosures? I have two. And the first is in the case S11496-8, Eagle Crossing Subdivisions, second 18-month time extension. I worked for the petitioner on this specific track in the capacity of stormwater management. I declare a conflict of interest and ask to be excused from presiding over this matter. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate, please? Mr. Kange, would you state your motion and speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In case S11496-8, I move that Mr. Young participate in the case, although I will not vote in favor of this in this motion based on the chairman's statement of his conflict.
Thank you. And this was seconded by Member Cole. And since there is opposition, I'll call for a vote. Yes vote directs me to participate. A no vote recuses me. And there are 7 noes, 1 abstain, so I am directed not to participate in case S11496-8, Eagle Crossing Subdivision. My next disclosure is case S12024-1, Denali View Subdivision, lots 1 through 8. My firm has had business dealings with the petitioner's representative or on other matters. My firm also worked for homeowners that surround the subdivision evaluating groundwater resources. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate, please? Mr. Kange and Mr. Cole seconds. Mr. Kange, would you state your motion and speak to your motion, please?
Mr. Chair, in case S12024-1, Denali View Subdivision, I move to direct the chair, Mr. Young, to participate in the case.
Thank you. And is there any discussion? Or would you speak to your motion, please?
Chair, based on your statement, you have no personal or financial interest in the case. I believe you can act fairly in the case and tend to vote in favor of my motion.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries, and I'm directed to participate in the Denali View case. 2. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meeting is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules and Procedures, or Commission Rules of Procedures. Petitioners, including all his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., have 5 minutes, and individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503 or an appeal of the board's final appealable decisions per AMC 21.30. And the first item tonight is case S12019-1, Waldron subdivision, and this is a notification to postpone, and we have to vote on this. Is that correct? May I have a positive motion for postponing this case until December 4th, 2013? Mr. Cole and Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Cole, would you state your motion, please?
Yes, sir. In the case of S12019-1, I would move to continue this matter to the December 4th calendar at the request of the petitioner.
Thank you. And is there any opposition or discussion on this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries, and case S12019-1, Waldron subdivision plat, is postponed till December 4th, 2013. The next case is 11496-8, Eagle Crossing. I'm going to recuse myself, and Mr. Story will preside over this case.
Can we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for a second 18-month time extension for a preliminary plat of Eagle Crossing subdivision. The preliminary plat to subdivide 7 tracts into 97 lots and 9 tracts was approved for 60 months by the Platting Board on February 7th of 2007. The plat included 75 acres of the larger previously approved cluster housing plat for Eagle Crossing subdivision. First time extension request was approved by the Platting Board on April 4th of 2012, extending the preliminary plat approval to August 7th of 2013. This request for second time extension was received by the current planning section prior to the expiration date. Since the preliminary plat was approved, there have been 5 subsequent requests to alter the conditions of approval as they relate to the construction of Eagle River Lane. The most recent modification was approved by the Platting Board on February 6th of 2013. The Board approved a modification of condition number 1 of case S11496-5 that essentially stated that Eagle River Lane from Highland Ridge Drive to Ptarmigan Boulevard would be constructed in 2 phases. The first phase would be completed by October 1st of 2013, and that phase would extend the southern 1,100 feet of the roadway. And the second phase would include the northern 520 feet, and that was to be completed by October 1st of 2014. Staff understands that the petitioner was unable to secure permitting to complete the first phase of construction for the southern 1,100 feet of Eagle River Lane by the deadline of October 1st of this year. It is not constructive to determine fault. Rather, staff has reviewed the application and is making a recommendation to the Platting Board based on sound planning practice. In this situation, the reality is that it is too late in the construction season for Eagle River Lane to be built to municipal standards. The Platting Board can take no action that will result in the construction of Eagle River Lane this year. Therefore, staff is recommending that the Platting Board approve the petitioner's request for a second 18-month time extension to February 7th of 2015, subject to 3 conditions. The major condition here is condition number 1, and I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and state what that should be. Constructing Eagle River Lane to the required improvements as provided for in the executed subdivision agreement signed by the developer from Highland Ridge Drive to Ptarmigan Boulevard by no later than October 1st of 2014. So the first phase of construction was to be done this year. The second phase was to be done next year. Essentially what we're doing is we're putting off the full construction of Eagle River Lane to October 1st of 2014. Everything will be completed next year. Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for staff? Mr. Cole?
Through the chair, can you explain to me again that the basis for your opinion is proper planning?
Through the board, Mr. Cole, essentially we're in a situation where if this second 18-month time extension is to be denied, basically we'd be starting back at square one. We've made some steps forward. The petitioner has made an effort to secure permitting. They've been unable to do that at this point in time. We're working towards permitting so that we can get the construction of the roadway underway. If in fact it was denied, we'd be reverting back to square one, and we'd be no better off in 2014 than we are today. So from a planning perspective, I feel as though we should, while we would like to have the road or portion of the road constructed this year, we're moving in the right direction, and we'd like to have it fully constructed next year.
But you would agree with me that we have more disapprovals or agencies against this extension in this particular one than like we have in many of our cases, right?
Through the chair, Mr. Cole, I think that there are some agencies that may be a little frustrated that the road is not constructed, but I have to look at this from a planning perspective, and will we be any better off if this is denied? I would certainly say not. So,
Last question. Is there something the municipality's doing as far as not getting the permitting that they need to build this road?
through the chair, Mr. Cole, I really don't want to place blame on anybody. I think that, there could have been things that could have been done on both sides to help this process along. Unfortunately, those things didn't happen. We're working towards them. I believe that the petitioner's representative is working with staff to secure the permitting, as we speak. So I feel fairly certain that the road will be constructed October 1st of 2014.
Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll open the meeting for public hearing. Can we have the petitioner's presentation, please? Would you like to save any time for rebuttal?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I'll need any time for rebuttal. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Jim Sawhill. I'm with Lounsbury & Associates and here tonight representing Driftwood Bay LLC in the request for an 18-month time extension. I would request your support of our 18-month time extension. We don't have any objections or amendments to the staff's recommended conditions as stated. When I originally planned for this time extension, I expected to have Eagle River Lane built by the time I came before you for this time extension, and unfortunately we're unable to accomplish that. Despite our best efforts of getting this project permitted, we were unable to accomplish it. We started our process in March with our first submittal for some design waivers with Steve Schrader, and as of this date, we still do not have our full permit for the road. We've satisfied all conditions of staff. We have 3 comments on electrical for our street lights left to satisfy. That's been resubmitted. I was hoping to have that done before we got here today to let you know that that was approved, but we are very, very close to having our permit in place for Phase 1 and being ready to go for next year. Some of the complications we ran into with Eagle River Lane surprised me. It was a much more difficult design than I anticipated going in, and Eagle River Lane itself has a long history. One of the issues that really caused us the most problems was the road was originally planned, and the original designs were created in 2000 by PTS, and at that time it was designated a local road. And then in 2005, the designation of the road was changed to a collector road. And that change in standards and the change in design standards that related to that made this a very difficult road to get completed. We needed several variances from Steve Schrader, the municipal engineer, and I don't know if any of you have experienced getting Steve Schrader variances, but it's a tough process. And we started in March and weren't able to accomplish that until June. So that set us way back. And despite our best efforts to push this through, we were unable to get it done. We bid the project, we had a contractor selected, we had a loan in place, we were ready to go, but I was unable to permit this project, which is a first in my professional career to be unable to do that. It was frustrating for me. I know it was frustrating for staff. It was frustrating for the developer. Basically, nobody is happy, and I don't really expect the board to be happy about this, but it's kind of where we're at this point. We would appreciate your support of getting our time extension so we can move forward for next year. I am happy to report to the board that in our previous presentation to you to split this into 2 phases, it was to allow us to get the right-of-way on the northern end of the project from Mr. Hanaway. And there is an agreement in place to be able to purchase that property and obtain that right-of-way. So that stumbling block for Phase 2 has been removed, so we'll be able to accomplish that on schedule. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Sawhill. Does the board have any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, Mr. Sawhill, could you just describe to me what variances you requested of the municipality of Mr. Schrader?
The three variances we requested was a local road has a maximum grade of 10%, and the road was set up, the emergency access road that exists today, as a 10% grade. The maximum road for a collector road is 8%. The original design of the road did not anticipate providing a 5% grade through an intersection for the road going into Eagle Crossing Phase J. So we had to modify the design to provide a 5% grade through that intersection. And then the radius of the dedicated right-of-way is 500 feet, and a collector road requires a minimum radius of 600 feet. So we had to get, those were the three variances we had to work through with Steve Schrader. In the end, he would not approve a variance for a grade through an intersection, so we had to modify the design to provide that, but he did approve a variance for grade of the roadway itself on either end. So we have a steep road, a flat road, and then a steep road again. We're on a very tight side hill, so trying to get those grades set so they wouldn't just spill out and go all the way down into the A wetlands that are below there, because we can't encroach into A wetlands without, a big hurdle with the core. So it's just a very, very tight design, and those variances and those changes were, very, very difficult to get done.
So do you have what you need now from him to move forward with the project?
Yes, we have the variances from him. We've submitted plans based on those variances, and again, the plans, except for the streetlights, are approved.
Can I ask you how long that process took to get through that with the municipality, the variance process?
We made our first submittal in March 7th, and we received approval of our variances on June 11th.
Okay, so about 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Are there any other questions from the board to the petitioner?
What is the condition of the road right now?
The road was constructed to emergency access standards. It's basically a gravel road with a wrap surface. Currently, the Eagle River Road Service District maintains the road, and the developer reimburses the municipality for that maintenance.
Is it currently potholed out there? Or?
It's a gravel road, and on that hill it gets washboard quite a bit, and so the street maintenance has to grade the road several times a year to keep it smooth.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Sahil.
Thank you.
We'll now open the hearing for public testimony. Is there anyone that would wish to speak? Please state and spell your name.
Not that tall. My name is Laura Demander. I am the Laura-Demander. I am the Eagle River Valley Community Council Platting and Zoning Board representative and the Driftwood Bay Homeowners Association president. I posted 2 of the negative comments on the public comment section of the webpage. And I am here today to speak in favor of the extension. Both the organizations I represent, in light of the reality of the situation, have reconsidered and decided to support the extension due to the difficulty the developer has had in getting their permits, and in light of the assurances Mr. Davidge has provided that the project will be started as soon as possible in the spring after breakup. So both organizations have agreed to withdraw their negative comments and speak in favor of the extension. And that's really all I had to say tonight, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, Mr. Sawhill, would you like any other words?
I don't have any rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now close the public hearing, and the matters will now rest on the board. Can we have a motion in this case? Mr. Walker.
I move that we grant the second 18-month extension to February 7th, 2015, subject to the 3 conditions stated on page 3 in the staff notes, and that's for case number S11496-8.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Walker, could you speak to the motion?
I believe that the paper that has been provided here, including the staff report with respect to all of the activities taken in since March, demonstrates due diligence with respect to trying to get the permitting to proceed. Some of the other problems that were present back in March when we heard this matter earlier have been resolved with respect to the rights-of-way. There have been assurances provided supporting the development of the road at the earliest opportunity in the spring, and it's also being supported by the affected homeowners in the area. I think that sound planning would provide that we should take advantage of all of the work that was invested over the summer in getting the permits as they're granted and not sending them back to square one.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to the motion or provide any additional findings? Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections, the motion is approved. We'll take a quick break while Mr. Young comes back into the hearing. Thank you.
The next case tonight is S12020-1 Cruise Subdivision, Block 3, Lot 5. And this is a request for postponement until December 4th. May I have a positive motion directing this case to be postponed until December 4th? Mr. Walker, is motion. Would you speak to your motion, please?
I move that in matter S12020-1 Cruise Subdivision, that the matter be postponed to December 4th, 2013, to allow the legal description of the property to be corrected and re-advertised for public hearing.
Thank you. And Ms. Enoch seconds. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries, and case S12020-1 Cruise Subdivision is postponed until December 4th. The next case is case S12024-1 Denali View Subdivision, lots 1 through 8. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is for modification of a restrictive plat note for plat number 2005-152, plat note number 8, which states, quote, "The developer has chosen to develop the property utilizing individual wells rather than a community water system and is bound by the following. Individual property owners shall fulfill the Department of Natural Resources condition requirements to appropriate water to include that any lot being developed shall drill a well prior to construction of a home. Lots 1, 2, and 3 shall be served by wells penetrating the sand and gravel aquifer. The petitioner wishes, end quote, the petitioner wishes to replace the existing language of plat note number 8 with the following, quote, each lot owner in the subdivision shall have the option of drilling and obtaining water from a single-family well or obtaining water from a Class C well and water system currently in place in the subdivision that is designated to service that lot owner's lot, as long as either option utilized is done in accordance with the Alaska Water Use Act, Alaska Statute 4615, and regulations thereunder, end quote.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff?
Once I'm not finished. I apologize.
Proceed.
2 Class C wells are currently in place within this subdivision. The wells are centrally located and will result in lower construction costs and may decrease the demand on the serving aquifer. The plat note modification would allow individual homeowners to decide for themselves whether to connect to the community system or construct and maintain a private water system. Per the well logs, both existing Class C wells provide adequate water to serve less than 25 people. Depending on how the undeveloped lots within the subdivision are developed, 1 or 2 lots may need to be developed by private well. The water supply demand is likely to remain the same whether the subdivision is served by Class C or private wells. It is because of this that the municipality on-site water and wastewater section has no objection to the petitioner's request to modify this note. Additionally, the Alaska Department of Natural Resources has reviewed the petitioner's request and has no objection. However, their letter of non-objection does not represent any assurance that adequate water supply can be obtained from any current or future well. Because the on-site water and wastewater section and the Alaska Department of Natural Resources have reviewed the petitioner's request and have stated no objections, staff is inclined to support this view and recommend that the Platting Board approve the petitioner's request to modify plat note number 8 from plat 2005-152. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? We'll now open the public testimony portion of the meeting, and would the petitioner's representative please step forward, state your name, spell your last name, and let us know if you'd like to reserve time for rebuttal. If you don't reserve time for rebuttal and you have time left over, you can use it for rebuttal.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Mike Anderson. I'm with Anderson Engineering, and I represent the developer of Denali View Subdivision, MM&M Contracting. And our sole purpose with the changing of the plat note is to allow more choice in the development of the lots. Currently, there are 2 Class C wells in place, which would appear to provide enough water to satisfy the needs of the subdivision development. And that is basically the reason why we're asking that the plat note be changed. So with that, I'd ask for any questions.
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 26 seconds left that you can use for rebuttal. Are there any questions of the petitioner's representative, Mr. Anderson? I guess not.
Seems pretty simple. Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public wishing to testify tonight? Anybody at all? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Anderson, would you like to use any of your time for rebuttal?
No.
I have a few questions I would like to ask of you.
I wasn't active in the subdivision development or the aquifer study, so this is Arlene Myers, the representing MM&M Contracting, and she may be able to answer some of these questions.
Thank you. Are the 2 Class C wells, are those both in the sand and gravel aquifers?
No, one is in bedrock aquifer.
And
It's 500 feet deep, and it's a artesian flowing well.
And do you know how much that well was rated as being capable of producing?
It's either 7 or 8 gallons a minute.
Do you remember which lot that is on?
That's on Lot 7. It's what we call the upper well.
Do you have a map in front of you? The map that I have would require more than reading glasses to read the lot numbers. Thank you. And Mr. Anderson, have you done septic evaluations for the septic systems on these lots?
We have. There's actually, I believe, 3 septic systems in place, and we just recently installed another one on Lot 4.
And how deep is it to bedrock on those lots?
We haven't encountered bedrock on any of them.
On any of the lots?
No.
And how deep have you gone on the ones that you've explored or investigated?
Our typical test hole is about 16 feet, 18 feet max.
Can you tell me again which lots that you investigated?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Yes. Could you tell me again which lots that you investigated?
Okay, we've done Lot 4, Lot 5,
Lot 1 and Lot 3.
Lot 1 and Lot 3.
I'm not sure, well, was on-site services aware of the water problems in the surrounding community when you asked for this modification?
Well, we've discussed our intention with on-site, and they've been integral in the conversation that's gone on with this plat note modification. So they are fairly aware of what the water situation is up there.
And was DNR also aware of the water situation? I asked this because in the past I know they were, but both the municipality and the Department of Natural Resources have people working there now who were not involved in this in the past either.
We worked pretty hard to get a letter of non-objection from DNR, and there were several conversations over how the plat note occurred in the first place, and the water situation and what we were actually looking to get here.
And they got copies of the hydrology reports before they did their letter of non-objection.
The DNR had copies?
Yes.
And did the municipality on-site services have copies also?
Yes, they did.
My concern is, and the studies that I did in the past, I found that in the Scimitar subdivision, which bounds us on the down gradient side, that most of the houses had 2 to 3 wells that were 500 to 900 feet deep, and that water was very scarce. And I was hoping to see an adequate aquifer test, which I'm not in a position to ask for that now, and I never did. The wells that are uphill in the uphill subdivision, the homeowners have complained in the past that when new wells were drilled, their wells went dry, and there was a sequence of that. And I agree with the municipality staff's opinion that the amount of water that would be taken out of a bedrock aquifer would be no more than taken out of the sand and gravel aquifer. But the sand and gravel aquifer has a much higher potential of producing long-term water and having the least impacts on the surrounding community. I do see that there is water rights in place that if somebody were to drill a well and dry up somebody else's well, if they have water rights, and the DNR could help them, and that may create a problem. But my biggest concern is with the septic, and what I found before was nitrate problems in the Scimitar subdivision where dye was put into one well and showed up a few lots, not downhill but laterally, fairly recent or fairly soon after the dye was put in, and it seems like the bedrock aquifers here are very vulnerable to pollution, and not only from nitrates but bacteria, pathogenic organisms, viruses. And the one thing that seems to me that didn't get in the original plan, which had nothing to do with you, Mr. Anderson, was that I believe the bedrock aquifer should be protected and have nitrate-reducing septic systems. And I would like you to offer an opinion on that tonight, to how to protect the bedrock aquifer that has very limited water supplies and seems to be quite vulnerable to pathogenic organisms and nitrate pollution.
Well, several of the wells in the upper hillside area are also bedrock wells. So I think if we say that everywhere we have a bedrock well, we need a nitrate-reducing septic system, we're setting a precedent where we could say that at some point in the future, almost all septic systems are going to end up nitrate-reducing. So I think testing is probably one way to know for sure if that's the direction that we're going with nitrate pollution. And in this case, the testing that's been done so far doesn't indicate that. But these lots have only been developed for a few years, so it's difficult to say just exactly what's going on there. So I guess in my opinion, it takes a period of time and a dense population in order to create enough pollution to do that kind of damage to or cause that much pollution to an aquifer. So I think it's a little premature to say right now that nitrate-reducing systems are necessary in that particular area.
I agree that setting a precedence for anywhere there's bedrock is inappropriate. At least that's my opinion. That would be inappropriate. I'm concerned where there's shallow bedrock that's less than 16 feet deep. That's where I'm concerned that the aquifers are more vulnerable because you don't have the sand and gravel to filter out viruses and particulates, parasitic cysts, bacteria colonies. You can get rapid transit or transport of those organisms in rock. And I'm concerned about these other lots that are now going to consider using that rock aquifer if that is indeed shallow rock. And that's why I'm asking about the nitrate-reducing septic systems, if that aquifer, which is vulnerable, is going to be used. And I'm not saying that all aquifers and rocks are vulnerable. I'm not implying that.
Gravel 4366 feet.
66 to bedrock.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the well log in this particular area shows that the bedrock is at least 66 feet deep. And the actual depth of the well is 500 feet. So we actually have bedrock from 66 to 500 feet, which would seem to offer a little bit of protection between the septic system effluent, which is traveling through the gravel before it gets down into the aquifer.
I think that everybody in the municipality would agree, well, maybe not everybody, but would agree that 66 feet of unconsolidated material is more than adequate to protect the aquifers. I'm concerned when there's less than 16 feet to rock, and I don't have any information about Lot 7, Lot 8, and what is the other one, 5 and 6? Or you have 5, what about 6? How deep is it to rock? And
That was in the original subdivision test holes that were done, and the Muni at that time that it was approved agreed that if they decided the whole area needed the nitrate-reducing septic systems, we would have to do that. If they're not required at the time, then we have to meet the same standard as everybody else.
Right.
And these are very large lots. I mean, one of them is 1.25 acres, the other one's 7 acres, one of them is 8 acres, one of them is 12 acres.
My concern is shallow rock. I don't have any information tonight to make a determination if that situation occurs here where the septic systems are going or not. But
You did quite extensive reports on that subdivision when you were hired by the opposition to do.
I did. And my concern tonight, I'm not working for the opposition, my concern tonight is for public health and public safety. And since you're requesting to use the rock aquifers that are vulnerable, I'm trying to...
Whether we use the rock aquifer for one well or we drill 3 wells in the rock aquifer. It seems to me if you're putting 3 holes down, you're going to be messing up the aquifer more than if you're using the water out of 1 well. Because we're allowed to drill a well on every one of the lots.
We're talking...
We're talking well, not the septic system.
No, I'm actually talking aquifers and aquifer protections, and that's what I'm asking about, and that's what I'm concerned about. The sand and gravel aquifer has adequate protection from septic effluent as long as the septic systems are installed correctly. If you're going to use the rock aquifer, I'm concerned about the vulnerability in this subdivision. And I'm concerned because there's already been nitrate problems in Scimitar subdivision adjacent to it that have been pretty severe.
Not in all the lots. In some of them, yes, I agree with you, but not in all of them. It depends on how the...
Sure.
We had 3 hydrology reports done before we got this subdivision approved for 8 lots. All we're asking is that instead of having to drill 8 different wells, that we can use the 2 existing wells for the houses in there.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is that you're asking to be able to not use those wells and to be able to drill new wells.
No, there's no plan to drill new wells.
So you're requesting just to use the community wells?
That's correct. We just want the option to be able to use the existing wells as community wells. Right now, the plat won't allow that option.
There might be, we may have to drill 2 wells out of the 8 lots, depends on whether we can put 3 or 4 lots per the 2 wells that are on.
The Class C well designation only allows 3 houses per well.
So 6 of the lots could work with just the 2 wells.
There may be another well required, depending on how the subdivision develops.
And where would that additional well be?
The location's already platted, I believe, isn't it?
It would be either Lot 6 or Lot 8.
And is that in the bedrock aquifer or in the unconsolidated?
Well, that's right. Lot 8 is right next to Lot 7, and it's got 66 feet of sand and gravel. Lot 7 does.
Where the well is going to go?
What?
Where the well is going to go, or excuse me?
I'm not sure where the well, that's a 12-acre lot. We haven't, that's the last one we'll be developing.
So my bigger concern is not where the well is going to go, so I misspoke when I asked that question. Where the septic system is going to go, how much protection is on Lot 8 is going to be underneath?
I didn't bring the soils tests for
There'll be a minimum of
the
150 feet between the well and the septic system. That's required by state law.
Well, municipal code, but I'm talking about the vertical distance between the septic system and the bedrock. What is the vertical distance?
Well, based on records we have so far, we assume it's going to be probably about 55 feet. I mean, there's no way of knowing without going out there and doing the actual soil boring. It may be more.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions of the petitioner or the petitioner's representative? Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing is now closed, and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion in case S12024-1 Denali View subdivision lots 1 through 8? Mr. Walker, and Mr. Kane seconds.
As to case number S-120241, Denali View subdivision lots 1 through 8, I move to approve the request for modification of the restricted plat note number 8 from plat 2005-152 to state each lot owner in the subdivision shall have the option of drilling and obtaining water from a single-family well or obtaining water from a Class C well and water system currently in place in the subdivision that is designated to service that lot owner's lot, as long as either option utilized is done in accordance with the Alaska Water Use Act, Alaska Statute 4615, and the regulations under 11 Alaska Administrative Code 93.
Thank you. And Mr. Kane seconds. Mr. Walker, will you speak to your motion, please?
I move that the notes be changed. It has received the approval of the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, the on-site wastewater services, the Alaska Department of Natural Resources. All have approved it. I think that it's based on the facts that that the petitioner has presented here at the hearing with respect to the amount of sand and gravel through which the water is, the effluent is going to be processed, that there's adequate protection of at least that water well. And with respect to the rock well, it appears that it's passed the proper testing to be used currently. It sounds like there's adequate protection with this.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion or findings? I'm just going to offer my opinion on this. First, I intend to support this motion, and I certainly had reservations about the vulnerability of this rock aquifer, and I haven't seen the test results from the 2 wells that have been put in, but based on testimony tonight from the petitioner's representative, these are adequate wells. The upper well produces 7 or 8 gallons a minute of water, and it appears that as far as the vulnerability, that there's probably adequate sand and gravel or even silt above the bedrock that would provide protection of the aquifers. I was going to recommend that they be required to use nitrate-reducing septic systems to protect the water, but if they have more than 16 feet to bedrock, there should be adequate material present. I do recommend that they make sure that there's an adequate sand layer, at least 2 feet of sand below the septic system, below the leach field, to act as a filter. So I will support this. I believe there's adequate information available that water is available and that the aquifer will be protected. Is there any further discussion or findings? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing is seen none, the motion carries and the condition is approved. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the Board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice to appeal. There's no one in the building, and so I'm not going to read the last paragraph. Okay, and the next item on our agenda tonight is appearance request. We have no appearance request. Any other requests We have no other requests. Are there any persons to be heard? Are there any reports from the secretary? We have no committee and the chair has no report. Are any board member comments tonight?
Nice meeting.
Thank you. And may I have a motion for adjournment, please? All right, Mr. Cage, Mr. Walker, the meeting is adjourned, and it is, I can't tell what time it is, 7:32. Thank you. Thank you.